They've taken a break from the busy interview schedule and running around the halls of GDC to sit down and have a play with a game that has a very serious theme. It's called Please Knock on My Door, and it deals with mental health, if you will. Can you tell us a little bit about what your ambition with this game is and what you want to try and achieve?
Yeah, so Please Knock on My Door is a narratively driven game that basically tries to help you understand what it feels like to be alone. And the game is in part based on my own life experiences and my own experiences with mental health issues such as depression, feelings of loneliness and phobia. And my hope is that the game will be able to help the player to understand these very difficult themes, just as it has helped me as I was developing it to get a fresh perspective on what I was going through a couple of years back.
Because I spent some time playing it, and it really is one of those games that sort of it looks at your life from top down, literally from top down. You're sort of going through the shores of your daily life, picking and choosing what to do and what not to do, and that is sort of a little bit how you could feel when you're in this situation. You're sort of out of body experience almost when you're feeling down.
Yeah, for sure. So a large part of the game is just, as you mentioned, going through the routine, and what I was trying to capture is that feeling of pointlessness. So a part of feeling depression is that you lose the sense of enjoyment from things that you used to like, and I've tried to capture that by trying to just focus on the melancholy aspect of it and the routine, just finding different ways of wasting time to get to where you need to be. So for instance, when you played it, the narrator told you that you needed to leave your apartment at 7:30, and then you did things in order to get just at 7:30 to leave, and then you actually went past that by 15 minutes. So yeah, I think that's very interesting. I have noticed that people who play the game try to actually either take their real life routine and apply that in the game world. So if they, for instance, are the kind of people who take showers in the morning, they will do that in the game as well, to kind of just find that same routine as they do in real life. And I find that very interesting, that without asking you or asking the player can still sometimes do that just out of reaction to what the game is asking you to do.
I think the first thing I do is to sit down on the toilet, so I think I did that as well.
Yeah, yeah, and that's, I mean, it's not necessarily what I had in mind, but it's still very interesting to see that aspect of it. And of course, another aspect is the explorative nature of games that I try to use with this title. So, Please Knock on My Door is not about winning or losing, and I try to make that clear to the player that it is always their choice. It is not necessarily a wrong choice to never go to work and just try to get the quote-unquote negative ending, but it can be necessary in order to get the entire experience of the game and to understand fully what the game is trying to tell you about these very difficult themes.
I think it's important also because sort of in a game space, you know, eating would give you health or points or something like that, but you're not really shown that here, and I guess that's the point of it. The motivation isn't there because that's sort of what you're trying to simulate, that you're not motivated to do any of this. You might do them anyway, but you're not really seeing why you're supposed to do this.
Yeah, sure. And as I said before, the game tries through the narrator to tell you to like keep up your routine, and if you don't eat, he will tell you that maybe you should maybe you should cook some food or take care of yourself, and that also reflects in the animation of the main character. But you're never really penalized directly, as you said. There's no like health system, so it all comes down to what you want to do with the main character as a player and what you want to see happen next. And so I feel like that is what should drive the player choices, and not so much as how can I win this situation, because the win condition in a game like Please Knock on My Door is of course, did you get a wider perspective on the theme of mental health? Did you? Well, then you won. That's how you win a game like that. So and I feel like that's a true strength of our medium, that we are able to do that, and we are able to let the player ask the question, what if? In movies, the viewer can't really do that. They have to use their imagination, as while in games we can have the option to show the player what would happen if they did or did not, for instance, go to work or eat or sleep.
Because there is it is interesting, because the main character, of course, is just sort of like a black sort of.
Yeah.
He's not really. He's not manifested in any other way, but it's interesting also the way you sort of introduce other characters in the game, sort of indirectly. You get notes from other characters, and there is. It's not like you are alone, but it's more like you're not perhaps. It's not alone in the sense that you're alone and there's no one else out there. It's just that you're not connecting with them at the moment.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a very important to distinguish that, because as you just mentioned, in the game you are not alone as in you have no other people around you, but you're feeling alone as in you are not connecting with any of them. And throughout the game there will be characters who try to connect with you, and the player will get to choose how the main character tries to handle that situation, if they respond to it, if they try to seclude themselves. And I've tried to make that choice in a way that it's not supposed to be obvious. I want the player to think along the lines of, well, if I don't try to reach out in this current situation, then maybe my character will feel a bit more comfortable with themselves. Maybe there will be another better opportunity later on. And I try to not give just like clear yes or no answers. You didn't reach that part actually, but later on, each day when you go to work, you will be confronted with a dilemma where the main character will be in a situation, just very ordinary situation. It can be something as simple as the game tells you that you're walking past one of your colleagues and she's not looking at you, and then you get to pick, should you try to say hello or should you just stare into the floor as you pass her? And that's just to try to capture the very the essence of those small moments that gets very difficult if you're suffering from something like depression or social anxiety that you ordinarily wouldn't think about.
Because the game also makes you reflect everything that you do a lot more, and I guess that's sort of part of it, that you do sort of tend to overthink, and sort of you're not just acting, you're sort of everything analyzing, and everything gets a little bit more difficult because of that, and that is exactly what's being simulated.
Yeah, for sure. And the game is a lot about you, the player, thinking about what the main character is going through, maybe what you would do if you were in that situation, trying to understand why would the main character's choices and actions be different from those that you would take, or maybe they wouldn't be different, and what's that saying about you, perhaps. And my hope is that the player will go through that thought process, and I spent a lot of time crafting the texts in the game of the narrator, and when you're reading the diary of the main character when you are at the end of the workday, to try and help the player think through these subjects and not just having them being delivered.
I certainly think that it's kind of hard to imagine someone not feeling some sort of recognition with some part of the game, regardless of your sort of whatever you know your situation in life is, there's always something there that we've all been encountered at some point or another, where we had those kind of doubts and thinking about these things.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think it's very common. I mean, obviously not everyone has suffered from depression, but still, even if you haven't, I think that, I mean, everyone has had their low points in their lives, and I feel like it's important to take some time to reflect on them and think about why you acted in certain ways when you went through those. And maybe also think about how you would act if someone that you know would go through those difficult circumstances. That's also one of the parts with the game. I want to give a voice to someone who doesn't have the strength to use their own. So for instance, if someone who is currently going through depression and they play my game and they think about, wow, this is really connecting with me, this is what I'm feeling, then if someone asks them, hey, what are you going through, can you explain, they could just hand over the game and say, hey, play this might be able to help you understand, because those emotions and feelings and situations are very difficult to put into words and just, you know, give out like on demand when you're asked like that. So I feel like having a game that captures that in the safe environment of a game, and where the player gets to explore the topics, I think there is real value in having that.
I guess that also ties to the title of the game, Please Knock on My Door, because that could be sometimes the most difficult thing to ask for help when you're in this sort of situation.
Absolutely, and the title is of course a metaphor, not only like literally knocking on someone's door, but knocking on someone with a question like, how are you doing? That could be a form of knocking on someone's door, just asking, what's up, how are you feeling?
What's the plan ahead with the game? When are you planning for a release, and etc., etc.?
I'm aiming for a release later on this year. I'm aiming for autumn. I have pushed my release date 3 times. The game it started off as a prototype, then I had an idea that it should be finished in like 6 months, and now I'm aiming at 2 years. So that gives you an idea of the state of it. But I feel very confident this time that it will be released in autumn.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.